Forget those survival TV shows. Real experts lived in the Arctic for centuries. The traditional Inuit had 10 genius tricks that would surprise even today's survival pros. They didn't just survive in one of the harshest places on Earth, they turned it into home, using only what nature gave them. One of their secrets? Qulliq. Surviving in the Arctic wasn't about battling nature. It was about working with it. And few things proved that better than the qulliq. This stone oil lamp wasn't just a way to see in the dark, it was the center of survival, providing heat, light, and a way to cook food, all from a single flame. Wood-burning fires, useless in a land without trees. Batteries? Not exactly an option. Instead, the Inuit mastered the use of seal and whale oil, fueling a flame that could burn for days without needing to be relit. It melted ice for drinking water, warmed shelters, and kept meals from freezing solid. The wick, made from moss or Arctic cotton, had to be trimmed just right to keep the flame steady. Too much, and the oil burned too fast. Too little, and the flame struggled to stay lit. A delicate balance, but one that meant the difference between warmth and a very long, very cold night. But the qulliq wasn't just about survival, it was about tradition. Women, the keepers of the flame, passed down the skill of maintaining it through generations. A properly tended qulliq meant comfort, safety, and the kind of steady warmth that made an Arctic night feel a little less endless. Letting it go out at the wrong time, that was the kind of mistake that didn't get forgotten easily. Even today, the qulliq still burns in ceremonies, a reminder of the resilience and resourcefulness that kept the Inuit alive. A simple tool, but one that made life possible in a place where the cold never played fair. This clever use of naturally available materials shows how the Inuit mastered their environment rather than just enduring it. And speaking of mastery, ever wish your dog would just understand you without a word? The Inuit figured it out centuries ago. While our modern dog training typically involves verbal commands, treats, and sometimes frustrated shouting, "No, not roll over. I said sit." Component placement. The Inuit developed something far more sophisticated, a completely silent communication system with their sled dogs. Why silent? In the Arctic, sound travels incredibly far over the snow. Shouting commands could scare away potential game or even attract predators. Plus, try yelling with a face covering in minus 40-degree weather. Your words come out as unintelligible mumbles anyway. Their solution was brilliant. Inuit dog handlers developed a complex system of body movements, subtle hand signals, and sometimes just meaningful eye contact that their dogs could understand perfectly. A slight shift in the musher's weight might signal a turn. A particular hand movement could tell the lead dog to stop. A specific posture could communicate danger ahead. Most modern dogs would interpret all these signals as time for treats. The bond between an Inuit dog team and their handler was extraordinary. Teams of 8 to 12 dogs could navigate treacherous ice fields, avoid dangerous thin ice, and find their way home in whiteout blizzard conditions, all without a single verbal command. These weren't your average sit-for-a-treat training sessions. Training began when the dogs were just puppies and continued throughout their working lives. The most impressive part? The training worked both ways. The dogs learned to communicate back, alerting their handlers to dangers they could sense, but humans couldn't. One account from an early Arctic explorer described watching an Inuit handler and dog team travel across seemingly featureless snow for over 40 miles, making countless turns and adjustments with nothing more than slight body movements guiding the entire journey. If only modern GPS had a furry, four-legged option. While these incredible dogs helped the Inuit travel across vast frozen landscapes, survival in the Arctic required more than just transportation. In a land where fruits and vegetables were virtually non-existent and scurvy was a constant threat, the Inuit created one of history's most unusual yet nutritionally complete foods. Qulliq, sometimes called blood ice cream by outsiders. What exactly goes into this Arctic delicacy? The recipe varied by region and season, but the basic ingredients would make most modern nutritionists do a double take. Fresh animal blood, usually from caribou or seal, was mixed with rendered fat and snow, then whipped until it reached a light, creamy consistency. The first food that literally required you to chill while making it. This blood-based mixture served multiple crucial purposes. The iron in blood prevented anemia, while the fat provided essential calories to maintain body heat in sub-zero temperatures. In fact, a single cup of traditional akutak could contain up to 2,000 calories, nearly an entire day's energy requirement for an active person in extreme cold. Unlike our sugary desserts that spike blood sugar and then drop it, this protein-rich mixture provided sustained energy for hours of hunting or traveling across ice and snow. The frozen texture also helped hydrate without requiring the body to warm liquid water, conserving precious body heat. When available, the Inuit would add seasonal berries, roots, or even pre-chewed grasses to the mixture. The animal fat preserved these plant materials, creating a rare source of vitamin C that remained viable throughout the long winter months. Some elders claimed a properly made batch could last for several months without spoiling, thanks to the preservative qualities of both cold and fat. Modern foodies talk about nose-to-tail eating like it's revolutionary, but the Inuit were masters of waste-free nutrition centuries ago. The blood ice cream represents something profound about Arctic survival: ingenuity born of necessity. Nothing was wasted, and even what might seem unappetizing to outsiders became life-sustaining nourishment. This principle of adaptation applied to transportation as well. When moving across frozen terrain, the Inuit faced a common problem. This might sound like a desperate last resort, but for the Inuit, it represented cutting-edge transportation technology. The problem with wooden runners in extreme cold is twofold: they create friction against snow, and worse, they can freeze solid to the ground during stops, requiring tremendous force to break free. It's like having your car tires permanently welded to the driveway. Not exactly convenient for your morning commute. Caribou leg bones and whale jaw bones provided the perfect solution. These bones possess natural properties that make them superior to wood in Arctic conditions. Their smooth surface creates significantly less friction against ice and snow. Even more impressively, bone runners develop a microscopically thin layer of meltwater beneath them during use, creating a natural lubricant that wooden runners simply cannot match. Mother Nature designed the perfect sled part long before humans figured out how to build sleds. The construction process was both practical and ingenious. Long bones would be carefully cleaned, split lengthwise, and attached to the wooden base of the sled. For extra durability, the bone runners were often coated with a mixture of moss, blood, and water that would freeze into an even smoother surface. Tests conducted by modern engineers have found that bone runners reduce pulling effort by up to 40% compared to wooden runners in temperatures below -20 degrees. That difference could mean life or death when traveling long distances with limited food supplies. Ancient Inuit would have given those engineers the "we knew that centuries ago" look. The most remarkable aspect of these bone runners was their longevity. While wooden runners might last a season or two before splintering or wearing down, well-maintained bone runners could last decades. Elders passed down particularly well-crafted sets to younger generations, with some historic examples showing evidence of use spanning more than 30 years. Talk about recycling. These runners went from helping animals run through the Arctic to helping humans do the same. The genius of bone sleds showcases the Inuit philosophy of using every available resource to its fullest potential. But survival in the Arctic waters required equally innovative thinking. For most of us, this situation would spell certain disaster. Water temperatures in the Arctic hover just above freezing, cold enough to kill an unprotected human in minutes. Add to this the weight of traditional fur clothing, which becomes impossibly heavy when wet, and you have a recipe for tragedy. The Inuit solution? Don't leave the kayak. The technique now commonly known as the Eskimo roll was a life-or-death skill that every Inuit kayaker mastered. When a wave, ice flow, or simple mistake capsized their kayak, skilled paddlers could right themselves without ever exiting their vessel. A crucial ability when swimming in Arctic waters was essentially a death sentence. The physics behind the maneuver are deceptively complex. Using a combination of hip movements, paddle leverage, and body momentum, a kayaker could roll their entire craft back to an upright position. This had to be done while holding their breath, upside down, in freezing water, often while wearing bulky clothing. These weren't casual Sunday paddlers worried about getting their phones wet. What makes this skill truly remarkable is the speed at which it could be executed. Historical accounts from early explorers describe Inuit kayakers performing complete rolls in under 2 seconds. barely enough time for their faces to feel the sting of the frigid water. Some particularly skilled individuals could even execute multiple consecutive rolls as a demonstration of their mastery. The training began young. Children practiced the movements on land first using scaled-down kayaks. They would then progress to shallow water, with elders nearby ready to assist. By the time they were hunting independently, the roll had become as instinctive as breathing. Modern kayakers spend weeks learning what Inuit children picked up before their 10th birthday. The waterproof seal on these kayaks was enhanced by another ingenious feature: specially designed waterproof clothing that could be secured to the kayak's opening, creating a single waterproof unit of person and vessel. This innovation meant that even during a roll, minimal water entered the craft. While mastering water survival was essential, the Inuit also needed ways to stay warm on land. Most of us consider frozen rope a nuisance. It becomes stiff, difficult to manipulate, and seemingly impossible to tie into effective knots. Try hanging laundry with frozen clothesline and you'll invent new curse words. For the Inuit, however, this apparent drawback became a remarkable advantage through a technique that transformed ordinary materials into tools of extraordinary strength. The frozen rope trick worked on a simple principle: what freezes together stays together. Animal sinew or plant fiber ropes would be carefully positioned, then deliberately moistened with water or even saliva. In the Arctic's intense cold, this moisture would freeze almost instantly, creating solid bonds that were remarkably stronger than conventional knots. Ice, the original superglue, just add water and subtract about 50 degrees. This technique found countless applications in daily survival. When constructing sleds, frozen bindings could withstand forces that would snap ordinary knots. Hunting weapons like harpoons were assembled with frozen sinew that provided both flexibility and incredible tensile strength. Even temporary shelters benefited from this method, with ice-hardened lashings capable of withstanding Arctic gales that reached over 70 miles per hour. The ingenuity extended beyond simple fastening. By layering multiple strands of sinew or cord, then freezing them into position, the Inuit created composite materials with properties that modern engineers would recognize as similar to reinforced plastics. They were essentially 3D printing with ice centuries before we needed fancy machines to do it. These frozen composites could be shaped into hooks, fasteners, and tools that remained rigid in conditions where metal would become brittle and wood would snap. Perhaps most impressive was the adaptability of this technique. The level of rigidity could be precisely controlled based on need. More water created more ice and thus more strength, while less water allowed for some remaining flexibility. This made the frozen rope method suitable for everything from rigid framework to semi-flexible joints. Modern shipping companies still struggle with cold weather packaging, while the Inuit turned the very problem into a solution centuries ago. While mastering the use of ice as a building tool was essential, the Inuit also needed ways to harness fire in a land where wood was scarce and the environment seemed hostile to flames. Fire in a land dominated by snow and ice presents obvious challenges. Arctic winds routinely reach 30 miles per hour, extinguishing flames and dispersing precious heat. Wood is scarce or non-existent in many areas, and attempting to build a fire inside an ice structure seems contradictory. Wouldn't the shelter simply melt away? The Inuit solution combined practicality with a deep understanding of thermodynamics. By arranging snow blocks in a semicircular wall, they created an effective windbreak that protected flames from gusts that would otherwise snuff them out instantly. Snow plus fire equals survival, not disaster. These weren't haphazard piles of snow, but carefully constructed barriers. The blocks were cut similarly to those used in igloo construction, but arranged in a curved wall facing away from the prevailing wind. The height was typically about 3 feet, tall enough to block wind, but low enough to allow smoke to disperse rather than accumulate. The genius of these fire shields extended beyond simply blocking wind. The curved shape reflected heat back toward the people gathered around the fire, dramatically increasing the effective warmth. Studies of traditional designs have shown that a properly constructed snow fire shield can increase the felt temperature by 15 to 20 degrees in the sheltered area, the difference between frostbite and comfort. Even more remarkably, these structures didn't rapidly melt as one might expect. The intensely cold Arctic air continuously refrozes the inner surface of the snow blocks. As the fire's heat gradually melted the innermost layer, the resulting water would refreeze before penetrating deeply into the block, creating a thin ice glaze that actually enhanced the reflective properties. These snow walls were basically thermal mirrors before humans invented aluminum foil. The fire shields demonstrated how the Inuit saw resources not as fixed in their properties, but as flexible materials that could be adapted to serve seemingly contradictory purposes. This principle extended to personal comfort as well. In the Arctic environment, wet clothing isn't just uncomfortable, it's deadly. When temperatures plunge far below freezing, dampness conducts body heat away 25 times faster than dry clothing. This rapid heat loss can lead to hypothermia and death in a matter of hours. Traditional methods of drying clothes by a fire weren't always possible. Fuel scarcity, dangerous weather conditions, or the need for stealth while hunting meant alternatives were necessary. The Inuit solution? Their own bodies. The technique now known as armpit drying was a critical survival skill. When gloves, socks, or other small items became wet, Inuit would remove them and place them directly against their skin, often in the armpit, against the chest, or between layers of clothing. The natural heat and dryness of the body would gradually pull moisture from the wet items. The world's first organic clothes dryer ran on seal meat and body heat. This wasn't just a desperate last resort, it was a refined technique. Different items required specific placements. Mittens and gloves went in the armpits or against the chest under fur parkas. Wet socks were pressed flat against the torso or thighs. Larger items might be spread across the back, with outer layers of dry clothing pressed against them to create a moisture-wicking sandwich effect. The key innovation was maintaining movement during the drying process. By continuing to hunt, travel, or work while drying items, the Inuit took advantage of body heat generated through physical activity. The motion also helped redistribute moisture more evenly, preventing damp spots from freezing. For items too large for body drying, another clever technique emerged. Wet furs or larger clothing pieces would be thoroughly beaten with sticks to break up ice crystals, then laid out on snow on extremely cold, clear nights. The dry Arctic air and natural process of sublimation, ice transforming directly to vapor without becoming liquid, would effectively freeze dry the items. Today we need special machines to freeze dry food, but the Inuit were freeze-drying footwear with nothing but air and patience. Body heat was essential for individual survival, but when rest was needed, Inuit communities relied on an equally ingenious approach to group sleeping arrangements that maximized warmth while minimizing the risks of extreme cold. When temperatures dropped to minus 50 degrees and the wind outside could freeze exposed skin in seconds, simply piling on an extra blanket wasn't an option. The Inuit had a better system, one that turned communal sleeping into a carefully arranged heat trap. It wasn't just about huddling together. Their sleeping arrangements worked like a perfectly structured heat sandwich, and just like any good sandwich, the key was in the layering. Children who lost heat the fastest were placed right in the middle, snug between warm bodies on all sides. Around them were women and older adults, forming a second insulating layer. The outermost spots? Those went to the strongest adult men, who generated the most heat and had the best cold tolerance. Basically, they were the human equivalent of a windproof jacket, except way less breathable. Beyond just positioning, the sleeping setup had other smart tricks. Fur platforms lifted people off the freezing ground, multiple layers of animal skins trapped warmth, and some groups even had special breathing techniques to prevent moisture from turning their shelter into an ice cave. And it worked. Studies found that with the right arrangement, the temperature inside these sleeping groups could be 50 to 60 degrees warmer than outside, all without a single fire or external heat source. Meanwhile, modern campers spend hundreds on high-tech sleeping bags, only to wake up realizing their toes are still frozen. The Inuit didn't just survive the cold, they mastered it. And when it came to staying warm, nothing beat a well-placed human heater. This community approach to survival extended to knowledge sharing as well. In the Arctic, nothing went to waste, not even waste. While most people today flush and forget, the Inuit saw potential in everything, including human urine. And as it turns out, when life gives you pee, you make precision tools. Sharpening blades in a treeless, rock-scarce land was no easy task. Traditional grinding stones were hard to find, and metal tools were rare luxuries brought in through limited trade. The solution? Chemistry. specifically the ammonia and salts found in urine. When left to ferment, urine became even more potent, increasing its ammonia content. This liquid was then applied to bone, antler, or stone blades. Sounds questionable, but stick with it. Science was on their side. In freezing temperatures, the soaked blade would instantly ice over. As the crystals expanded, they created microscopic fractures along the edge, naturally sharpening the tool without needing a whetstone. For bone and antler, the ammonia also softened the material slightly, allowing for easier shaping before it refroze into a razor-sharp edge. But the benefits didn't stop there. The degreasing properties of urine stripped oils and impurities from bone, making tools stronger and less likely to crack. Hunting weapons went through multiple soaks for maximum sharpness, while qulliq, the semicircular knives used for food prep and skinning, stayed sharp enough to slice through and hide with ease. Meanwhile, modern knife enthusiasts argue over the best sharpening methods, while the Inuit had a solution sitting right under their noses, literally. And when European metal blades arrived through trade, the technique was adapted. The ammonia helped clean off rust and corrosion, extending the lifespan of these new tools. This wasn't just about sharpening, it was about survival. Every material had a use, no matter how unconventional. In the Arctic, ingenuity meant the difference between life and freezing to death, and the Inuit found a way to turn waste into cutting-edge technology. Quite literally. Even more impressive, different types of blades received different treatments. A finely honed hunting spear might be soaked multiple times for extra sharpness, while carving tools got a more controlled application. Some groups even mixed urine with ash or animal fat for specialized sharpening methods. Who needs a high-tech sharpening kit when you've got science and, well, a very renewable resource? It's easy to laugh at the idea today, but it worked. While modern campers and survivalists spend a fortune on gear, the Inuit achieved razor-sharp edges using a technique available to literally everyone. A resourceful, efficient, and surprisingly sophisticated method that turned something most people would throw away into a survival tool. These 10 survival techniques represent just a fraction of the ingenuity and adaptability that allowed the Inuit to thrive in one of Earth's most challenging environments. Their solutions to extreme problems demonstrate how human creativity can overcome seemingly insurmountable challenges through observation, experimentation, and generational knowledge.